Another day and another turn in the Bill Belichick to the Falcons saga as we got some new rumors coming out that this might not be as close as a done deal as maybe we thought it was a week ago. So we're going to unpack all of the latest on Bill and talk about some of the next best candidates if it's not going to be Belichick coming down to Atlanta. But Josh Kendall from The Athletic wrote this article early this morning, and it had a very interesting little snippet I wanted to share with you all. Here's what Kendall wrote. The Belichick candidacy has lost momentum in the past week, with multiple league sources telling The Athletic that assuming it's Belichick or bust is inaccurate. Now, that's very interesting because just a few days ago, we had Jonathan Jones from CBS Sports write, but a source familiar with Belichick told CBS Sports blank desperately wants Belichick and that it's ultimately Belichick's job if he wants it. That source said it's 50-50 right now that he takes the job. So I've got The Athletic telling us that it's not a done deal and it's not Belichick or bust. And I've got Jonathan Jones saying Arthur Blank desperately wants Bill Belichick. So which one is it? Well, this little news tidbit that came out yesterday, of course it came out right after I finished filming a Falcons video, from Adam Schefter might give us an insight into who's right and who's wrong here. Because the Jags are hired former Falcons defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen. Now, when a head coach gets fired, the rest of their staff is not fired. In fact, sometimes when the next head coach comes in, they retain a good chunk of that staff if they did a good job. I think we can all agree that Ryan Nielsen did an outstanding job in his first year as the Falcons defensive coordinator. So why did Atlanta let him walk? Initially, they denied him the opportunity to interview for other DC jobs. And then after talking to Bill the first time, the Falcons changed their minds. They said, Nielsen, you can go interview elsewhere. My theory is they know that the next head coach is going to bring his own staff in, and they don't have a spot for Ryan Nielsen. And as a result, the Falcons did him a courtesy, and they let him interview for other DC jobs. That way, when he gets inevitably canned, he has an opportunity to go coach elsewhere. So which head coach would come in and clean house? I don't think a young hotshot Bobby Slowik or Mike McDonald would come in and move on from a very successful DC, right? An under 40-year-old coach getting an opportunity to be the head coach for the first time probably wants to keep the good pieces in place. Whereas Bill Belichick, he doesn't really care how good of a job he did last year. He wants to bring his entourage in. And so that, to me, signals Bill Belichick is coming to Atlanta. Otherwise, the Falcons would not have let Ryan Nielsen get another DC job. Maybe I'm reading into that too much, but don't you agree it's a bit strange for the Falcons to let a very good DC go take another job if the next head coach would have retained him? Right? Okay. I also want to go back to this Josina Anderson quote/tweet from about a week ago where she wrote, barring a snag in negotiations or a future development, still have to get a signature, I'm expecting Bill Belichick to become the next head coach of the NFC South Atlanta Falcons. His previous rap report with Falcons CEO Rich McKay creates comfort he can't mimic in any other building with a current vacancy. So I've got Josina Anderson saying she expects Bill Belichick to be the next head coach. Now, a lot of signs are pointing to Bill being the next HC in Atlanta, but we still have The Athletic saying it's losing momentum. And I don't want to just bash on The Athletic. I think they put out some great work, but I also am old enough to remember back in November when another Atlanta Athletic contributor, Jeff Schultz, wrote this. There has been no win now or else mandate from Falcons owner Arthur Blank to coach Arthur Smith in recent days. There won't be. There shouldn't be. Smith is not going to get fired this week or next week or any time soon. So no offense to The Athletic, but they don't necessarily have the best track record of nailing what's going on in Flowery Branch. I still think it's going to be Bill Belichick. Yes, there is a little bit of, I wouldn't say deception necessarily, but some maybe confusing interviews the Falcons are arranging, if Bill Belichick is their guy the whole time, that leave us a little bit puzzled as to where this search is currently headed towards. I don't think we're going to see a hire anytime, maybe not anytime soon. I think we could see a hire by the end of this week or after the NFC and AFC championship games. We just had the Titans hire Brian Callahan, so the first domino fell, and we might see some panic-ish hires. That way teams don't lose their number one candidate. But I think there are three reasons why the Belichick to Atlanta rumors have cooled off a little bit over the last 72 hours-ish. Reason number one is it could be for leverage purposes, right? Belichick met with the Falcons twice, the second time with Rich McKay, Terry Fontenot, the upper brass in Atlanta, and maybe in that meeting, Belichick said, I want complete personnel control. I want to have my hands on everything. And the Falcons weren't on board with that. So they left that meeting going, hey, let's kind of leak a couple of things. Let's schedule some interviews. Let's get Belichick nervous that we might go another direction. And then he'll come back to us and go, okay, I don't need all of that control. And then they come to a deal. That's reason number one. Reason number two is I think Arthur Blank wants to at least turn to his fan base and say, we did a whole search, right? We looked at every single possible candidate. We left no stone unturned, and we hired Bill Belichick after interviewing several candidates. That way, it doesn't look like they did a shitty job if they just interview Bill Belichick, hire him a week or two later after they comply with the Rooney Rule, and then if Belichick does not work out in Atlanta, well, Falcons fans are going to have pretty good memories going, you never even did a thorough search last time. You picked one candidate and just stopped right there, and all of a sudden, heads might roll. And reason number three is maybe they're out on Bill Belichick, which I would be very surprised by that, but I can acknowledge that lining up a whole bunch of second interviews is definitely a bit fishy if Bill is your guy from day one. But there is a possibility that after that second interview, Arthur Blank maybe had a complete change of heart. Maybe he left that interview thinking, you know what? Bill is just not the guy we thought he was going to be, and we want to go a different direction. That is a possibility. I don't think that's the possibility, but I can at least acknowledge that is a potential reason for why the Belichick to Atlanta rumors have cooled off. But if it doesn't happen, if Belichick does not come to Atlanta, I have a reason as to why that might be the case. And it contradicts what Josina Anderson said a few moments ago in the video. Because Albert Breer, RIP Sports Illustrated, put this out in a recent article of his. It's hard to see Belichick being comfortable with any sort of arrangement where he's reporting to McKay. That's the Falcons CEO. Mostly because, well, those two haven't been on the same page over the years, with the former Patriot coach's often open disdain for the NFL's competition committee that McKay has long chaired. So Josina, on one hand, said that would actually be a great asset to Bill Belichick to be working with McKay. And now I've got Albert Breer saying that could be a snag. And what if Bill met with Arthur and said, listen, I'll be your next head coach, but I am not reporting to Rich McKay. I could not stand that man on the NFL competition committee, and he is not going to be my boss. What if Arthur Blank said, tough luck. I'm not moving on from McKay, and I'm not changing his role. So either you bow down to these parameters, or we'll go a different direction. And maybe that is the one snag that could hold up Belichick coming down to Atlanta. Now, who do you guys think will be the next Falcons head coach? This is the pinned comment. I know everyone's afraid this day and age of giving a bold prediction because if you're wrong, people are going to come back and cold takes, old takes expose you. But scroll on down right now and shoot your shot. Let me know who you think the next head coach is going to be. Now, to wrap up here, let's look at some of the head coach interviews the Falcons have done or at least are scheduling. So they have requested an interview with Jim Harbaugh. They have completed 2 interviews with Bill Belichick. They requested an interview from Mike Vrabel. They requested a second interview for Ben Johnson. We've got a Bobby Slowik interview. Now they requested a second interview with Brian Callahan, but he was hired yesterday to be the next Titans head coach. They have Joe Brady and Brian Johnson down for virtual interviews. They have also requested a second interview with Ejiro Evero. They interviewed Steve Wilkes. They requested a second interview with Mike McDonald. That's the Ravens DC. They requested a second interview with former Falcons interim head coach and now Rams DC, Raheem Morris. They also requested second interviews with Aaron Glenn and Anthony Weaver. Now, they have to comply with the Rooney Rule, which means 2 external minority in-person interviews. And it's a little tough to know which interviews have been done virtually versus which ones have been done in person, but I'm not positive that they have completed 2 external in-person minority interviews, and that could be a major reason why a lot of these guys are getting second interviews, which it's unfortunate because that defeats the purpose in a lot of ways of what the Rooney Rule is, but when a team has their heart set on one coach, they have to comply by those rules. Now, next up on the show, if it's not Bill Belichick, who should Atlanta hire? I'm going to run through my next 5 top candidates for the Falcons. But really quickly, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor today, which is Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And right now, Dirty Birds, you guys are going to get $100 off when you buy a big game ticket with code Vegas100. So if you want to head to Las Vegas to watch maybe a 49ers and Ravens matchup or whoever's going to be in the big game, make sure you check out Game Time because you can get $100 off when you download Game Time and redeem code Vegas100. Don't worry, I put all that information in the comments and description. Now, I love using Game Time because it has so many awesome features. One of my favorite features about Game Time is that you can get a bird's eye view of what your seat will look like before you purchase tickets. So if you want to know, hey, am I going to be back in the nosebleeds or sort of toward the front, or am I going to be sitting behind a pole? Am I going to be at the 50, the 40, the 30-yard line? Where am I? Well, with Game Time, you can get an awesome shot of your seats. So if you want to go to Las Vegas and you want to catch the big game in a few Sundays, make sure you download Game Time today and use code Vegas100 for $100 off. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Right now, all Game Time users, like I said, get $100 off a big game ticket with code Vegas100. Or if you're not going to the game, no harm, no foul. Use code FalconsChat for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, let's get back to our head coaching search here because as we just looked at, the Falcons have completed or scheduled or in the process of talking to 14 candidates. One has already been hired, but all in all, there are 14 names here on the whiteboard. And so looking at this list a second time, let's talk about the top 5 candidates if it's not going to be Bill Belichick. This is my personal ranking. This is not what I'm hearing. This is not what my predictions are. This is if I'm Arthur Blank, I'm not working at Chat Sports anymore. I'm sitting on my yacht in the U.S. Virgin Islands. But these are my top 5 preferred head coach candidates. Coming in at number 5 is Texans head coach, Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik. So he was in his first year as the Houston Texans offensive coordinator, and we all saw how great of a job the Texans did this year, wildly exceeding expectations, winning a playoff game with a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud, and deservingly so. A lot of credit has been given to Bobby Slowik, who's got some NFL experience, and something that I really like about Slowik is he started his coaching career off on the defensive side of the football, then went over to offense, so he knows both sides of the football in great detail. I think ultimately Bobby Slowik might be 1 year too early from getting a head coaching gig, right? 1 year as an offensive coordinator, 1 year as a play caller, that might be a bit premature to anoint as your next head coach. I think teams might wait another head coaching cycle before giving Slowik a head coaching gig because they want to know, hey, was this year a bit of a fluke, or are you going to have the same type of success next year, right? You had a lot of success this year, but a lot of film and a lot of tape was put down on C.J. Stroud. Let's see next year how your offense bounces back once DCs have 6 months to try and slow down your offense. Can you still keep it moving? So I don't know if we're going to see Slowik get a head coaching gig in Atlanta or anywhere else this offseason. My fourth preferred candidate is Rams DC Raheem Morris, of course, a notable name in Atlanta as he served as the interim head coach for Dan Quinn, and he did a much better job in 2020 than Dan Quinn did to start the year. But he has been the Rams DC for the last 3 seasons, and that Rams defense this year, go look at the depth chart. And after Aaron Donald, ask yourself, how many of these names have you ever heard of? It was filled with day 3 picks and UDFAs because they didn't have a first or a second pick for a lot of the recent drafts. So they band-aid day 3 longest yard, like just nobodies, mailmen and plumbers defense, and Raheem Morris had them flying all over the field. Now, he also has some head coaching experience. If you remember, he was the Bucs head coach. He was the youngest head coach in all professional sports in the U.S. and Canada history when he was crowned as the Buccaneers head coach. I think that was probably a bit of an early move in his career, but I think Morris is ready for a second chance. I know there is always a lot of fear for a fan base to hire a head coach who is on his second head coaching stint if the first one did not go well. And I can understand why you get to that point, but I'm also going to remind you that Bill Belichick, the Patriots was his third head coaching stint. He had the Browns and he had the Jets. I think he learned a lot from Cleveland and New York, and we saw how well that paid off in New England. Same goes for Pete Carroll. Like, the Seahawks was not his first NFL head coaching gig. He was the Patriots head coach. I think he learned a lot from his time over in the AFC East. So I can get behind a coach getting a second chance. I think Raheem Morris is very well earned and deserving of a second chance. His GM, Les Snead, on his exit interview with the media after the season ended, had only great things to say about Morris, saying, I know this. He'll be able to hire an unbelievable staff. Every coach who's any good, who's qualified, they're going to want to work for Raheem. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of tampering charges because just about every player in the NFL is going to text him and want to come play for him. So his GM is really going to bat here, and I think Raheem Morris might not be a big-time sexy hire, but let me ask you this. How sexy of a hire was DeMeco Ryans for the Houston Texans? I don't think for Texans fans, it was kind of a homecoming, but league-wide, that wasn't some blockbuster hire. And look how well that paid off for Houston. So let me know, would you want Raheem Morris back in Atlanta? Yes or no? Let's get on to my third preferred candidate. How about Ben Johnson? So the Lions offensive coordinator has done nothing short of an incredible job in Detroit this season. He has been a play caller for 2 straight seasons now, and under Johnson, Detroit is averaging the 5th most points per game at just over 26. He's been in the NFL for quite some time, going back all the way to 2012. He was with Miami. He was with Detroit in various offensive roles. And the Lions offense and Jared Goff saving his career, a lot of that has to be attributed to what Ben Johnson has done as a play caller. Yes, he has a lot of skill on that offense, but also it wasn't an offense that was molded in free agency, right? He took young rookie players in Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs, and he put them in the best possible position to succeed. He took what the Rams deemed as trash in Jared Goff, and now Jared Goff is 1 win away from going to the Super Bowl. So if you can get the Detroit Lions, and again, it's not all on Ben Johnson, give a lot of credit, give most of the credit, of course, to their head coach, Dan Campbell. But if, as a play caller, you can push the right buttons to get the Lions not 1, but 2 playoff wins, I'm in. I think Ben Johnson's going to make a great NFL head coach. My second preferred candidate would be Mike Vrabel, the former Tennessee Titans head coach, who is now on the open market. He hasn't been as busy as I thought he would be. I'm a little surprised. There haven't been a whole lot of phone calls coming his way. Now, at Tennessee with the Titans, he went 54-45, 3 straight postseasons. They were the 1 seed in the AFC. He was the AP Coach of the Year. But the last 2 seasons, 13-22. He's only interviewed so far with the Chargers. Now, a report came in that he is going to interview with the Falcons on Wednesday. So if that interview goes well, he could shoot up the list here. I still think Mike Vrabel is a great coach. The reason why he was fired in Tennessee, I don't think was a result of the record as much as it was some politics with the owner, where the owner was not over the moon about the way Belichick handled his return to Foxborough, where he gave a speech and some of the language he used didn't put the Titans organization in the best light. And ultimately, I think the Titans owner, Amy Adams, she took it a little too personally, and that's going to be a decision that Titans fans may be calling for her head, which, when you're the owner, there's nothing you can do about it, in a few years, because moving on from Vrabel screamed huge mistake in my eyes, and I would welcome him with open arms in Atlanta. Now, my number one preferred head coach, if it's not going to be Bill Belichick ultimately, how can I not go with Michigan's Jim Harbaugh, right? He previously interviewed with the Chargers, and the Chargers, I'm not quite sure off the top of my head if they have complied with the Rooney Rule, but if not, they have to before they could hire Harbaugh. And that's kind of been the big rumor on the street if you are living under a rock, that it's Harbaugh to the Chargers, and it's just a matter of time. But he is going to have a second interview with the Falcons this week. So clearly there is some mutual interest here for him to come back for a second time, right? Maybe the first time it's a little bit of, hey, let me just dip my toe in the pond here and see what Atlanta could offer me. But coming back for a second interview, I think both sides are seeing something on the other end of the table that they like. And it goes to say that, you don't need to say that Jim Harbaugh was extremely successful in the NFL. In fact, he's been successful everywhere he has been in his coaching career. Before going to Stanford, he took the San Diego crew to back-to-back 11-win seasons, 29-6. And then he gets the job up at Stanford, and he takes them to 12-1, 8-5 in his last two seasons. Finishes 29-21, improving every single season, and that landed him a job right next door with the 49ers, where he went to 3 straight NFC Championship games to open up his NFL coaching career. And the long rumor has been he wants to get back to the NFL. That is his ultimate goal, is to win a Super Bowl. And after winning the national championship for his alma mater this month, this would probably be the best time if your goal is to go back to the NFL to make that change, right? You just won a national championship. Your stock's never going to be higher at Michigan. Sure, there's probably going to be a little bit of resentment and some saltiness that he would have left Michigan after winning a natty, but ultimately, national championships in college football, you can ride that high for a long time. And I think Michigan fans would appreciate what Harbaugh did for him. And like I said, if his number one goal is to win a Super Bowl, this would be the best offseason to make that jump, I feel like, because whether it's the Chargers or the Falcons, like you could go coach with Justin Herbert, you could go to Atlanta and get a top 10 pick in a QB-loaded draft class. You could bring J.J. McCarthy to Atlanta if you think he's going to make a great NFL quarterback. This would be the best time in my eyes. Now, before we get on out of here, I appreciate all of you that watch all the way to the end of the video. So if you are still watching right now, scroll on down, type ATL. It's always a good, measuring stick, if you will, for me to see who watches all the way until the end of the video.